What kind of person calls the cops on their neighbor for planting a single rosebush? I'll tell you. Karen Whitmore, the self-appointed queen of Willow Creek's Homeowners Association. She wasn't just a nosy neighbor. She was a one-woman tribunal, her clipboard a gavel, her emails a guillotine. My name's Lucas Kane, and I'd only been in this sleepy subdivision for 3 months when Karen decided I was public enemy number 1. It started with a rosebush I planted in my front yard, red blooms, vibrant. A tribute to my late mother. Karen claimed it violated HOA rules, something about unauthorized flora. I ignored her first letter. Then the second. By the third, she was pounding on my door, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. You're ruining the aesthetic, Lucas. This is a community, not your personal garden. I smiled, nodded, and went back to watering my roses. That's when she dialed 911. I was on my porch that crisp October evening, the air smelling of pine and fading summer, when the police cruiser rolled up. Karen stood on her lawn across the street, arms crossed, her blonde bob gleaming under the streetlights like a halo she didn't deserve. The officer, a young guy named Rodriguez, stepped out, looking more annoyed than alarmed. "Sir, we got a call about a property dispute," he said, glancing at my rosebush like it was a crime scene. I leaned back in my chair, sipping coffee, and nodded toward Karen. "She thinks my flowers are a felony." Rodriguez sighed, clearly used to HOA nonsense. Karen marched over, her heels clicking like gunfire on the pavement. "Officer, this man is defying regulations. He's lowering property values. I want him cited, evicted, whatever it takes." Her voice trembled with the kind of fury that comes from too many years of unchallenged power. I stayed calm. I dealt with worse than Karen in my line of work. Rodriguez asked for my side, and I kept it simple. "It's a rosebush. Planted it for my mom. She loved roses." Karen scoffed, loud enough to startle a passing squirrel. "Your sob story doesn't change the rules, Lucas. You're a renter, not even an owner. You don't belong here." That stung, not because it was true I was renting, but because of the way she spat it like I was dirt on her pristine cul-de-sac. Rodriguez scribbled notes, clearly itching to leave. "Ma'am, this isn't really a police matter," he started, but Karen cut him off. "Then make it one. He's trespassing on community standards." I almost laughed. Trespassing on standards? This woman was a caricature. But I saw the glint in her eye. Karen wasn't just annoyed. She was obsessed. I decided to push back just a little. "Karen, you've got a whole neighborhood to micromanage. Why fixate on me? Got something personal against roses?" Her face reddened, and for a moment I thought she'd combust. "You're a troublemaker, Lucas. I've seen your type, sneaking around, acting like you own the place. I checked your background. Shady. That caught me off guard." My background? I kept my life private for a reason, but I wasn't about to let her bait me. Rodriguez, sensing the tension, stepped between us. "Let's all calm down. Sir, can I see some ID?" I reached into my pocket, my fingers brushing the badge I always carried. Not yet, I thought. Let her dig her hole deeper. Karen wasn't done. She launched into a tirade about my suspicious behavior. Late-night jogs, packages delivered at odd hours, the fact that I didn't attend HOA meetings. "He's probably selling drugs," she hissed, loud enough for the elderly couple next door, the Hendersons, to peek out from their porch. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. I handed him my driver's license, keeping my badge tucked away. "Officer, I'm just a guy who likes roses. She's got no proof of anything." Karen's eyes narrowed. "Oh, I'll get proof. I've got cameras, Lucas. You're done here." I smiled, slow and deliberate. She had no idea who she was dealing with. The Hendersons shuffled over, their faces creased with worry. Mrs. Henderson, a sweet woman who baked cookies for new neighbors, spoke up. "Karen, maybe let this go? It's just a plant." Karen whirled on her. "Stay out of this, Margaret. You're too soft on rule breakers." Mr. Henderson put a protective arm around his wife, his voice firm. "You're making a spectacle, Karen. This isn't your kingdom." For a moment I saw a crack in her armor. Her lips twitched like she wasn't used to defiance. Rodriguez handed back my ID. "I'm not citing anyone over a rosebush. Ma'am, call us when there's a real crime." He tipped his hat and left. Karen stood there, fuming as his cruiser pulled away. I thought that'd be the end of it. I was wrong. The next morning, I woke to a certified letter taped to my door. Karen had escalated things to the HOA board, demanding my eviction for non-compliance. Attached was a grainy photo from her security camera, me watering my roses at 10 p.m. She'd circled my face in red marker, like I was a wanted criminal. I laughed, but it was a hollow sound. This wasn't just about roses anymore. Karen was out for blood, and I'd have to play her game to win. I slipped my badge into my pocket, feeling its weight. Soon, Karen, I thought. Soon you'll see who's really in charge. The neighborhood felt different after that night. Like a storm was brewing behind the manicured lawns and pastel mailboxes. Karen's letter wasn't just a threat. It was a declaration of war. I spent the next day digging into the HOA bylaws, a mind-numbing stack of rules that read like a dictator's handbook. The rosebush violation was real, buried in Section 4.2, but it was flimsy, more about uniformity than any actual crime. I could fight it, but Karen wasn't playing by the book. She was playing dirty, and I'd learned long ago that dirty fights require dirtier tactics. I started watching her. Not in a creepy way, just observant. Karen's routine was clockwork. Morning jog at 6 a.m., clipboard inspections at noon, emails to the neighborhood listserv by dusk. She'd linger near my house, snapping photos of my yard like a private investigator with a vendetta. I caught her once peering over my fence and waved. She flinched like I'd caught her stealing. Just checking for weeds, she muttered, scurrying off. Weeds? My lawn was pristine. She was building a case and I needed to know why. That's when I found it, the twist that made my stomach turn. I was at the local coffee shop, scrolling through the neighborhood's private social media group, when I saw Karen's post. New renter at 142, Willow Lane is a security risk. Background check shows inconsistencies. Stay vigilant. Inconsistencies? My heart thudded. I'd been careful, kept my past locked tight, but Karen had somehow sniffed out something. I clicked through her profile and there it was. A screenshot of an old news article, grainy and out of context, mentioning a Lucas cane in connection to a police incident years ago. It wasn't even me, just a namesake, but Karen was spinning it like I was a fugitive. The comments were a wildfire. Is he dangerous? Why didn't the HOA screen him? I don't feel safe. I slammed my laptop shut, my coffee turning cold. This wasn't just about a rosebush anymore. Karen was weaponizing misinformation, turning the neighborhood against me. I thought about confronting her, but that'd only fuel her narrative. Instead, I called an old friend, Detective Sarah Mills, who owed me a favor. Sarah, I need you to run a background check. Not on me, on Karen Whitmore. Sarah chuckled. HOA tyrant got you in her crosshairs? I'll see what I can dig up. By evening, she emailed me a file. Karen wasn't just a busybody. She had a history, lawsuits against former neighbors, a restraining order from an ex-colleague, even a dismissed fraud charge. The woman was a walking red flag. Armed with this, I decided to flip the script. I printed out Sarah's findings, redacted the sensitive bits, and slipped them into every mailbox on the street. Anonymous, of course. Let Karen taste her own medicine. The next morning, the neighborhood buzzed. The Hendersons stopped me on my jog. Lucas, did you see this? Karen's been sued for harassment. Mrs. Henderson's eyes were wide, like she'd just discovered her neighbor was a spy. I played dumb. Really? That's wild. Mr. Henderson frowned. She's always been controlling, but this? It's ugly. I nodded, keeping my face neutral. The seeds were planted. Karen didn't take it lying down. By noon, she was on the listserv denying everything. These are lies spread by troublemakers. I'm protecting this community. But the damage was done. People started whispering, avoiding her at the mailbox. She doubled down, though, hammering my door with another letter. A formal eviction notice signed by the HOA board. She'd rallied enough allies to push it through. I stared at the paper, my badge burning a hole in my pocket. It was time to stop playing defense. I called Rodriguez, the officer from before. Hey man, you free for a chat? He met me at my place looking wary. I showed him the eviction notice, The article Karen posted in Sarah's file. She's slandering me, officer. This is harassment. Rodriguez rubbed his temples. This is above my pay grade, Kane. But I'll pass it up the chain. I nodded, then casually slid my badge across the table. His eyes widened. You're a cop. I grinned. Undercover. Been keeping it quiet. Rodriguez whistled. Karen's in for a surprise. I leaned back, feeling the tide turn. She thought she could bury me. She was about to learn how deep I could dig. The showdown came faster than I expected. It was Saturday, the air thick with the scent of fresh-cut grass and impending rain. The HOA board had called an emergency meeting at the community center, a squat building with too many windows and a sign that read Willow Creek. Unity and community. Unity, my ass. The room was packed, 30 neighbors, some curious, some hostile, all drawn by Karen's latest email blast. Final action against non-compliant renter at 142 Willow Lane. I walked in late, my leather jacket drawing stares. Karen stood at the front, her clipboard a shield, her voice dripping with authority. Lucas Kane has repeatedly violated our bylaws, undermining our community's values. Tonight, we vote to enforce his eviction. The crowd murmured. Some nodded, others shifted uncomfortably. I leaned against the back wall, arms crossed, letting her talk. She projected a slideshow, my rosebush, the grainy photo of me watering it, that damn article about the other Lucas Kane. This man is a threat, she declared, her eyes locking onto mine. He's not one of us. That's when I stepped forward, my boots echoing on the linoleum. Mind if I say something, Karen? Her lips tightened, but she couldn't refuse without looking like a dictator. She nodded curtly. I faced the crowd, my heart steady. Karen's right about one thing, I'm not like her. I don't bully people into submission. I don't spread lies to ruin lives. Gasps rippled through the room. Karen slammed her clipboard down. How dare you? You're the liar. I held up a hand, pulling Sarah's file from my jacket. Then explain this. Lawsuits. Restraining orders. A fraud charge. You're not protecting this community. You're tearing it apart. I passed copies to the front row, watching faces pale as they read. Karen's voice cracked. Those are fabrications. You're desperate. But the Hendersons, sitting near the front, shook their heads. Mrs. Henderson stood. Karen, we trusted you. This is too much. The room erupted in whispers. Karen's allies, a clique of buttoned-up types, tried to rally, but doubt was spreading. That's when the twist hit. Mr. Henderson, quiet old Mr. Henderson, raised his hand. I have something to say. He held up a USB drive. Karen's been recording private conversations. I found this in her mailbox by mistake. It's got audio of her plotting to frame Lucas. The room went silent, like the air had been sucked out. Karen's face drained of color. That's not mine, she stammered, but her voice betrayed her. Mr. Henderson plugged the drive into the projector, and her voice filled the room. If we can't evict him legally, we'll make him leave. Plant something in his yard. Call it evidence. The crowd turned on her. Neighbors who'd once nodded at her every word now glared. Karen tried to backpedal, claiming it was a misunderstanding, but the damage was done. I seized the moment, pulling my badge from my pocket and holding it high. I'm Detective Lucas Kane, undercover, working a case in this area. Karen's been slandering an officer of the law. That's a crime. The room gasped again, louder this time. Karen staggered back, clutching the podium. You're a cop, she whispered, her voice breaking. I nodded, stepping closer. And you're under arrest for harassment and defamation. Rodriguez, who'd been waiting outside, walked in with handcuffs. The crowd parted as he approached Karen, whose knees buckled. She sank into a chair, her clipboard clattering to the floor. This can't be happening, she muttered, tears streaking her mascara. The neighbors watched in stunned silence as Rodriguez cuffed her, reading her rights. I didn't feel triumph, just a hollow satisfaction. Karen had built her own cage, brick by brick. As they let her out, the community center felt like a battlefield after the war. Tense, quiet, raw. The HOA board chair, a nervous man named Greg, stood. The eviction vote is canceled. We need to review our leadership. Nods rippled through the crowd. I slipped my badge back into my pocket, catching Mrs. Henderson's eye. She smiled faintly, a mix of relief and sadness. The fight was over, but the scars would linger. Karen's arrest didn't just end the meeting. It shattered Willow Creek's fragile facade. The next morning, the neighborhood was a ghost town. Curtains stayed drawn, mailboxes overflowed, and the usual hum of lawnmowers was gone. I sat on my porch, coffee in hand, watching my rosebush sway in the breeze. It felt like the only thing still standing. The Hendersons stopped by, bringing a plate of cookies. "We're sorry, Lucas," Mrs. Henderson said, her voice soft. "We should have spoken up sooner." I shook my head. "You did enough. That USB drive changed everything." Mr. Henderson shrugged, a glint in his eye. "Found it by accident. Karen's not as clever as she thinks." But Karen wasn't done haunting me. By noon, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Karen's out on bail. Watch your back." I wasn't surprised. People like Karen don't go quietly. They claw and scratch until the end. Sure enough, that evening I caught her car idling at the end of the street, her silhouette hunched over the wheel. She wasn't watching my house. She was watching the Hendersons. My gut twisted. This wasn't over. I called Rodriguez, who promised to keep an eye on her. But I knew better than to rely on promises. I'd have to handle this myself. I spent the next few days gathering intel. Karen had lost her HOA presidency. Greg had taken over, promising reforms, but she was still emailing the listserv, claiming she'd been framed by a corrupt cop. Most neighbors ignored her, but a few diehards rallied, posting about injustice and overreach. I didn't care about the noise. I cared about her next move. Sarah dug deeper, finding bank records that showed Karen had been skimming HOA funds for years. Small amounts cleverly hidden, but enough to buy her silence from past victims. I leaked that to Greg, who called an audit. The noose was tightening, but Karen was slippery. Then came the second twist. Late one night, I found a package on my doorstep. No label, just a plain brown box. Inside was a single rose, wilted and black, with a note. "You'll regret this, detective." My blood ran cold. Karen wasn't just fighting for control. She was unhinged. I called Sarah, who traced the delivery to a local florist. The order was placed under a fake name, paid in cash, but the florist's security footage showed Karen's face, clear as day. I had her. I filed a restraining order, citing the note as a threat. The judge granted it within hours. Karen didn't show at the court hearing. Instead, she went nuclear. The next morning, my rosebush was gone. Ripped from the ground, roots and all, leaving a gaping hole in my yard. A neighbor's Ring camera caught her in the act, sneaking around at 2 a.m. with a shovel. I took the footage to Rodriguez, who sighed. "She's not stopping, is she?" I shook my head. "Not until she's forced to." We drove to her house, where she answered the door in a silk robe, her eyes wild. "What now, Lucas?" "More lies." I held up the restraining order. "You violated this. You're done." Rodriguez cuffed her again, this time for stalking and vandalism. As they led her to the cruiser, Karen's facade finally cracked. She screamed, not at me, but at the neighbors peeking from their windows. "You're all spineless. I made this place perfect." Her voice echoed down the street, a desperate cry for a kingdom she'd lost. I watched her go, feeling no joy, only exhaustion. The rosebush was gone, but so was her power. The neighborhood could breathe again. I replanted that evening, a new rosebush in the same spot, its red blooms brighter than before. Mrs. Henderson helped, her hands shaky but determined. "This one's for all of us," she said, patting the soil. I nodded, knowing the fight wasn't just mine anymore. Karen had pushed us too far, and Willow Creek was ready to heal. Karen's second arrest didn't make the news, but it spread through Willow Creek like wildfire. Neighbors texted, whispered, gathered in driveways. The HOA board issued a statement, disavowing her and promising transparency. Greg, the new chair, knocked on my door with an apology. "We failed you, Lucas. The audit's uncovering more. Karen's been stealing for years." I nodded, unsurprised. "Just make it right." He promised to try, but I knew trust was harder to rebuild than a rosebush. I kept my distance from the drama, focusing on my work. My undercover case, a drug ring operating nearby, was heating up, and I couldn't afford distractions. But Karen's shadow lingered. Her emails stopped, but her allies kept stirring trouble, posting about HOA overreach and false arrests. I ignored them until one night, I spotted a familiar car circling my block. Not Karen's, a black SUV, tinted windows too sleek for Willow Creek. I memorized the plate and called Sarah. Probably nothing, she said after running it. But it's registered to a guy Karen sued years ago. Could be a friend of hers. My instinct screamed otherwise. The next day I found another note taped to my mailbox. Leave, or it gets worse. No wilted rose this time. Just her handwriting, unmistakable from the HOA letters. I didn't call Rodriguez. This was personal. I staked out her house that night, parked a block away, my badge heavy in my pocket. Around midnight the SUV pulled up. A man, mid-40s, stocky, got out and slipped something under Karen's doormat. I snapped photos, my cameras clicked, the only sound in the quiet street. When he drove off I checked the mat, a burner phone. Karen was planning something big. I took the phone to Sarah, who cracked it open. Texts cryptic but damning. Set it up for Friday. Make it look like him. My blood ran cold. Friday was tomorrow. I alerted Rodriguez, who got a warrant to search Karen's house. They found her in her kitchen, typing furiously on her laptop. The search turned up fake IDs, a stash of cash, and a plan to frame me for vandalism. Spray paint cans, stencils, even a mock-up of my signature. She'd been working with the SUV guy, an old accomplice from her fraud days, to ruin me. The arrest was quiet this time. No screaming, no theatrics. Karen just stared at me as Rodriguez cuffed her, her eyes empty. You think you've won? She whispered. I didn't answer. Winning didn't feel like this, hollow, heavy, like carrying a weight you didn't ask for. The neighbors didn't cheer. They just watched, silent, as her empire crumbled. The SUV guy was picked up an hour later, spilling everything for a plea deal. Karen's schemes, her lies, her years of control. It all unraveled in a single night. Willow Creek started to change. The HOA meetings became open forums, not Karen's stage. Greg planted a community garden, roses included, as a peace offering. The Hendersons invited me for dinner. Their table warm with laughter and stories of better days. I kept my badge hidden, my cover intact, but I felt lighter. The roses bloomed brighter. A quiet rebellion against the woman who tried to uproot us all. I stood on my porch one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky gold. Mrs. Henderson waved from her yard. A rose clipped from her own bush pinned to her sweater. We're free, Lucas, she called. I smiled, my hand brushing the badge in my pocket. Freedom wasn't just the absence of Karen. It was the courage to plant something new, to grow where you're told you can't. I looked at my rosebush, its roots deep, unyielding. This was my home now, and no one could take that away. The fallout from Karen's final arrest settled like dust after a storm. Willow Creek wasn't the same, it couldn't be. Neighbors who'd once ducked their heads at Karen's commands now lingered in their yards, chatting, laughing, reclaiming the space she'd ruled. The HOA board, under Greg's lead, slashed half the bylaws, including the one about my rosebush. I didn't attend the meetings, I wasn't much for crowds, but I heard the cheers from my porch. It felt like a weightlifting, not just for me but for everyone. One morning I found a letter in my mailbox, no stamp, just my name in neat cursive. Inside was an apology from Greg, written on behalf of the HOA. We failed to protect you from harassment. Your rosebush stays and so do you. Tucked inside was a petition, signed by 30 neighbors, asking me to join the board. I laughed, folding it away. Me on the HOA, I'd rather plant 100 rosebushes. But the gesture hit deep. For the first time I felt like more than a renter, more than a cop hiding in plain sight. The neighborhood started healing in small ways. The Hendersons hosted a barbecue, inviting everyone but Karen's old clique, who'd gone quiet. Kids played in the street again, their laughter louder than Karen's emails ever were. I helped Mrs. Henderson tend the community garden, her hand steadier now, her smile brighter. You gave us back our home, she said one afternoon, clipping a rose for me. I shook my head. You did that yourselves. She pressed the flower into my hand, her eyes warm. We needed someone to show us how. But Karen's ghost lingered. I caught whispers of her release, out on bail again, living with a cousin across town. She'd been banned from Willow Creek, but I knew better than to trust her to stay away. Late one night, my phone buzzed with a motion alert from my security camera. I checked the feed. A figure in a hoodie, too small to be the SUV guy, lingering near my rosebush. My pulse spiked. I grabbed my badge and a flashlight, stepping outside. The figure was gone, but a single black rose lay in the dirt, its petals crushed. I didn't call Rodriguez. This was a message and I'd answer it my way. I drove to Sarah's precinct the next day, handing her the rose and the footage. "It's her," I said. Sarah nodded, already pulling files. "She's got no allies left, Lucas. She's desperate." We tracked her cousin's address, finding Karen's car parked out front. I didn't confront her, not yet. Instead, I left a note on her windshield. "I see you. Stop." It was a gamble, but I knew her type. Fear works better than cuffs sometimes. The neighborhood didn't need another spectacle. I wanted peace, not revenge. So I kept planting roses, trust roots. Willow Creek wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And as the sun set, casting red light over my yard, I knew Karen's reign was over. The roses would outlast her, and so would we. Months passed and Willow Creek bloomed into something new. The community garden became a gathering spot. Its roses a symbol of defiance and renewal. Kids carved their initials into the wooden fence, where that old headline about Karen's downfall had faded into the grain. The HOA was quieter now, focused on practical things, fixing potholes, planning block parties. Greg turned out to be a decent leader, even if he still apologized too much. I stayed out of the spotlight, keeping my badge hidden, my cover intact. My undercover case wrapped up. A drug bust that made local headlines, though my name stayed out of it. I liked it that way. Karen was gone for good, or so it seemed. Her cousin's house was sold, her car vanished, and the listserv stayed silent. Sarah kept tabs, reporting that Karen had taken a plea deal, community service, far from Willow Creek. I didn't celebrate. People like Karen don't change, they just move on to new battlegrounds. But I wasn't fighting her anymore. I was building something, a life, a home, a place where roses could grow without someone trying to rip them out. The Hendersons became family in a way I hadn't expected. Mrs. Henderson baked me a pie every Sunday, each one with a rose drawn in the crust. Mr. Henderson taught me how to prune the bushes properly, his gruff voice softening when he talked about his late daughter, who'd loved flowers too. One evening they invited me to their porch, where we sat with lemonade and watched fireflies dance. "You're staying, right?" Mrs. Henderson asked, her voice quiet but firm. I smiled, nodding. Nowhere else I'd rather be. The neighborhood threw a spring festival, my rosebush at its center, surrounded by kids' drawings and strings of fairy lights. I stood back, watching families laugh, neighbors share stories, the air warm with hope. A girl, maybe 10, ran up and handed me a paper flower. "For your garden," she said, grinning. I tucked it into my pocket, next to my badge, feeling the weight of both, my past and my present, finally at peace. Late that night I walked my yard, the roses glowing under the moon. I thought about my mom, how she'd smile at this place, at me. I'd come to Willow Creek hiding, expecting to leave once my case was done. But roots grow deep, even in rocky soil. Karen had tried to uproot me, to break me with her rules and her rage. She didn't know I was stronger than that, forged in harder fights. The neighborhood had stood with me, not because of my badge, but because they saw what I saw, a chance to grow something better. I knelt by the rosebush, touching its leaves, soft and alive. Karen's shadow was gone, her power scattered like petals in the wind. Willow Creek wasn't just a place anymore, it was a promise. We'd fought for it, bled for it, planted it together. And as I stood, the night quiet around me, I knew I'd protect it, badge or no badge. This was home.